Well, the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, is here with me, as you can see. Very good morning to you, Home Secretary. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
We wanted to start where I finished with Victoria Atkins a moment ago on the topic of Mike Amesbury. Presumably you'd like to see him resign?
We think the people of Runcorn deserve better representation, and that would come for having a newly elected Labour MP. So I think they did really deserve better than this. It's completely unacceptable what has happened.
Obviously, the recall petition process does lead to a possibility that we'll get there down the line, but quite a few things have to happen first. Should you, as a government, look at changing the law such that if someone is in jail, that they shouldn't be able to draw their salary and should be forced to resign automatically?
Well, I think, clearly, whether it is through resigning or through recall, everyone's clear. The people of Runcorn need a new MP, and we want that to happen. We need to have a newly elected Labour MP for them to get the better representation that I think that they deserve. There's long-standing parliamentary rules which are separate from the decisions that government makes, but the action we took as soon as this happened was to make sure that Mike Amesbury would no longer be a Labour MP, would no longer be a member of the Labour Party. So we took that action immediately because clearly it's totally unacceptable what's happened. And I think this is one of those situations where, I'm here to talk about the crime and policing bill that we've put forward. No one is above the law. No matter who you are, no one is above the law. I'm
coming to that in one more question, but on Mike Amesbury, are you considering, therefore, changing the law on this so that next time automatically he'd be forced to stand down?
I think these are matters, obviously, for the parliamentary authorities and processes. That is separate from decisions government make, but we are clear we need a new representation in Runcorn.
And your own personal view on this as an experienced parliamentarian?
Rightly, I think we need new representation. That I think the people of Runcorn deserve better.
Let's talk about your bill today. There's a lot in it. It's really interesting going through the individual measures that you're introducing. Perhaps taking things further than people would expect. Warrantless entry is possible in certain examples. The ability to stop certain vehicles without further investigation. Has it made you uncomfortable getting to this point, or is it very clear it's important to crack down on crime and no matter what, you'll do that?
Do you know, I think people are really fed up of the kind of crime and antisocial behaviour, particularly in town centres and some of our neighbourhoods, whether that be off-road bikes, for example, that cause total havoc. And yet, at the moment, the police have to go through this process of repeat warnings. Well, what's the chance of them stopping the same person on the same off-road bike soon enough after the previous warning to be able to take action? It's not working. So that's why, if there is antisocial behaviour involving off-road bikes, we think the police should be able to seize those bikes straight away. And then similarly, on the mobile phone theft, in the last 2 years in the run-up to the election, we saw snatch theft go up by 50% in the space of 2 years. A lot of that's driven by mobile phones. And you've got victims saying, I can see where my phone is, I can track it, and yet the police can't act. So we do think it's right to give the police stronger powers to be able to help communities really take back control of our town centres and feel safer on the streets.
Not to sort of be pernickety on one of these measures, but I think it's indicative of the wider bill. But Find My Phone, for example, and warrantless entry to use that tool. What if it's in a block of flats? I mean, presumably then, you can't judge the height of the phone. Is the police going to be allowed to force entry into everybody's flat to find that phone?
Sure, no, the police need to make sure that it's proportionate. So that will obviously be very different if you're talking about a big block of flats and you can't tell where property is compared to if it's clearly located in a particular house. But the point is to give the police those powers to do that. It has to be signed off by an inspector. But we've got to take action to target this, what has become otherwise an epidemic of mobile phone theft, and to make sure that the police and communities have the ability to crack down on these kinds of crimes that just drive you up the wall.
One of the big concerns that the Conservatives had, speaking to them 15 minutes ago about this, and has been picked up by some, is some of the measures you're introducing are going to put a big increased workload on the courts and the prison service. How much have you had to weigh that up in your thinking about what measures to introduce or not?
Well, we clearly work with the Ministry of Justice on all of these measures, but this is also about preventing crime escalating. So another of the things we're doing is getting rid of the £200 rule that the Conservatives introduced for shop theft. And that £200 rule has meant that theft below £200, hardly ever investigated, action not taken. As a result, massive increase in shoplifting, over 60% increase in the 2 years in the run-up to a general election. Well, again, if you don't take action early, nip it in the bud, criminals just think they can get away with it. They go on to the next shop, and then the next one, and then the next one. They keep getting away with it. The crime gets worse. And that's why this is also about early action and having more neighbourhood police on the streets to do that.
I wanted to ask about something that kind of came out late last week. Apple have removed their Advanced Data Protection Tool, ADP, being used on the iCloud. Is that something that you welcome?
So I can't comment on operational security matters involving any individual case. All I can say is that there's a sort of wider approach that the UK government has taken actually for a long time through successive governments, which is to say that what you need is to ensure that people's privacy can be protected, but also that there can be action against child sexual abuse online and terrorism, so where they face the most serious threats. And we have a framework and approach that does those two things.
Did this come about because you were pressuring Apple to give you a back door into their tools?
So, again, I cannot comment on security, individual operational security matters. But there is this wider approach, and the reason that we have this wider approach is to ensure that we know there has been a huge expansion, particularly of child sexual abuse material online, particularly around the dark web, and also terrorist organising, extremist organising and radicalisation online as well. So we have to have a system where you can both go after the most serious and vile crimes that put national security, that put public safety at threat, but also make sure that there are safeguards in place for people's privacy, for people's own personal security as well. And we think that you can do both of those things in the way in which modern technology moves forward.
Clearly, there's a very important set of causes, as you say, behind that. 109 civil society groups signed a letter and sent to you, and they say that this move jeopardises security and privacy for millions, and it threatens the UK tech sector, setting a dangerous precedent. What's your response to that?
So all I would say is I think this overall approach that we have taken, this is not something that is something that has changed in the last few weeks. This is an approach that successive governments have taken. It's something that when Labour was in opposition, we supported measures that the Conservatives took on this. And I think it's always about arrangement where you do have a framework where there have to be safeguards, there have to be checks and balances, for example, in place, but where you also have to have law enforcement has to be able to go after the most dangerous of criminals online, including particularly some of the issues around child sexual abuse, which really troubles me, the way in which that is escalating online. And just to make reference back to the bill, the crime and policing bill that we're bringing in, we're actually strengthening the law in this area, and to strengthen the law against, for example, AI being used in creating child sexual abuse and material, and also having stronger penalties for those who are organising these forums. Effectively, it's paedophile forums, it's grooming forums online, and we are putting in place stronger laws against that. And I just think that's what we need in order to keep our children safe.
And just finally, Home Secretary, clearly back to the Mike Amesbury story, if there is a by-election, you might not win it. What we'll see, of course, is lots of steps to get there first. If you do lose it, is it more important, though, that the people of his constituency get proper representation? Well,
we want to see a newly elected Labour MP for Runcorn. That is what we want to see. That is what we think will give the people of Runcorn the best possible representation.
Home Secretary, as always, a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us, Yvette Cooper.